There's only one review of The Rings, only one that can bend the fan base to its will, and we do not share power. Welcome back to a review of The Rings. Today we are going to be reviewing episode 6 of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, which was the most recent episode. We are a couple of days later than we kind of usually are with this review, and that's really just down to life issues. Kel was busy Friday, I was busy Saturday with life stuff, and so we're kind of recording this on Sunday. So a little bit late if you were looking for us, all 5 of you who regularly tune in and watch us every week.
We love all 5 of you.
Yeah, great. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess if you've been watching any of our other reviews, you kind of know how this works. Before we get in, obviously, if you are watching us on YouTube, please leave us a like and a subscribe if you can. Obviously, getting our subscriptions up is really, really important to grow on the channel so you can get more content more of the time that you like. At the same time, if you are listening to us on podcast, then wherever you get your podcasts from, whether it be Apple, Spotify, etc., follow us on there, however that works on your podcast, and you can get all this in audio format as well.
Yeah.
If you're kind of more into sitting chilling with a set of earphones on, listening to a conversation. All our stuff's on podcast as well.
I mean, we're outstanding gym content. Like, you just put us on in the gym, and I promise the pounds will just come off or come on, however you're trying to get
especially
bulk up,
some of
lose
our
weight.
long form ones. Like if you're a big Star Wars fan, for example, we've got like 3-4 hour long podcasts discussing the ins and outs and super detail of every movie. So
you can get a lot of like hate energy from several of the opinions on this network via our podcasts.
And we've got the things like Daily COG, which is something that's a little bit shorter, almost every day. If you want to just kind of log on and see what Kel and Manny Gomez think about whatever shit is happening in the world of this crazy entertainment business on a daily basis.
And it is usually shit. Anyways.
On to episode 6. So, as always, we're going to get our thoughts and our grades pre-spoiler. Let you know what we think, and then we're going to get into spoiler talk and get into more detail about what we thought about the episode. So, as always, we'll start with you, Kyle. So, episode 6, where are you?
So I've said multiple times that I would rather something just be outright bad than disappointing, because being disappointed, seeing the potential just squandered, hurts. And
is that where you were?
That happened this week, man.
Interesting.
Look, a lot of it's not story stuff, and a lot of it's not even necessarily character stuff. I still feel like, and I mentioned this last week, I still feel like there's some editing issues here towards the end of this. Like, maybe it was too long and they cut it down. Maybe you guys should have increased the number of episodes. I don't know. But this was definitely choppy. Again, you feel like even though we spend almost the entire episode in one location, the way they cut it and edited it, you start feeling weird about the distances and the travel time, and it makes you wonder why the orcs didn't do X or the humans didn't do Y, or why they did X and Y opposite of each other, because it doesn't seem to feel to line up. And then they made almost the same mistake as Book of Boba Fett did, where they have this big climatic battle setup, but because of the locations, it doesn't feel as big. And the amount of people, especially in Boba Fett, they use so few people for their big battle, and this had more, but it's still, I mean, I've seen episodes of not House of Dragon, Game of Thrones with bigger, better battles in similar locations, villages or a castle courtyard type deal, and it just felt messy, man. It really did. There's a good story in there, there's a couple of moments where you're like, man, it would have been better if you had properly been able to build up to that instead of, oh, here it is, because we've only got a week left. Yeah, it was just mostly disappointing, and it sucks because there is a good story in there. There's a couple of good character moments, and when we get to the spoilers, I saw the twist coming a mile away, but that's because it made tactical sense, and I really enjoyed what RotR, right? That's his name he's going by there. I really like what RotR did with his resources, so to speak. So, I mean, I guess, yeah, disappointing. Not bad, but again, I almost wish it had been bad. Maybe not in this show's case, because it's been pretty good so far. Definitely the first week where I've been truly disappointed, even more so than last week, with the idea that they should have had two episodes to cover all of that, because this also had a bunch of little physical things. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, what did you grade it? What's your grade?
You see, I want so badly to give this somewhere in the B's based on the potential, but I really can't. Especially coming off of a set, the previous week also having what felt like rushed or poorly cut edited segments. I'm gonna give it a C+, man. This was not great.
I mean, we're not that far apart, because I gave it a B, which is definitely the lowest score I've given one of these episodes so far. I didn't quite dislike some of it as much as you, but where I will agree with you is that in terms of a battle set piece, which really this was, it's the setup's been coming, and this was the kind of climax moment, if you like. I just didn't find it all that imaginative, exciting, particularly creatively shot. It just felt, the only kind of positives that I would really give it is that they were relatively brutal in some parts. For example, and this doesn't go into spoilers, but I like when there's indiscriminate killings happening, that it's just not all young men getting killed, but yes, there's women getting killed, and
yes,
and that kind of, that's to me equality done right. Don't speak about equality and then say, oh, we should have seen the women and young ones and old men getting killed, but because like
we could also have female bad guys. Everyone out there, I'm looking at you, Disney, and you're making the hocus pocus witches not all that bad. It's okay. There are bad women. It happens.
Women villains can be really, really good. I mean,
yes.
Off the top of my head, I mean, some classics. Anyway, that's besides the point. So, I actually do appreciate where you're coming from, and what I kind of find strange is that this has been a couple of days since the episode was out, and as always, I've spent a bit of time online debating the whys and wherefores, and I'm going to get into some of that in a bit more detail once we get into the spoilers, because there's a discussion we need to have. But what I'm kind of finding is a lot of people that maybe thought it was too slow so far, Kyle, are now saying, oh, this was the best episode yet, because it was all action.
Oh my god.
And there's me thinking, this is the episode I liked the least so far.
The action's fine. It's not good though.
Because it's how you put that across. Is it wow, this show's just fell down a hill? No, because I think in terms of the battles that are to come in this show, this is very much small potatoes at this point. This is 500 partially trained sort of Numenorians at the very start of their kind of campaigns, if you like, coming over and fighting a couple of hundred maybe orcs. That's all it was. I mean, there was that's kind of small scale even compared to the Lord of the Rings, or the Hobbit in terms of battles. And and yet we know that ultimately this show should, depend on where they decide to end it, but in terms of the lore, we have to climax at one of the biggest battles ever fought, which is the last alliance of men and elves against when they actually march on Mordor and fight in the slopes of Mount Doom and all that shit you saw in the prologue of. I mean, there was a vast number of forces at play then, so I just hope that they actually improve upon how they decide to kind of put these action sequences together. I think it's almost in the concept of them. There was some moments where I thought, oh, I know what's going to happen here. Do you know why I know this is going to happen here? Because it's happened this exact same way in 1,000 different TV shows and 1,000 different movies, because everybody just copies the same thing. Now I'm thinking, without getting into spoilers, there's a character and another character in a struggle at one point, and another character comes up and stabs them while they're fighting, and I was just thinking, that's such an overused sort of cliche moment, and shot for shot, almost like everybody else does it, where you're looking at from the person who seems to have the upper hand, and then suddenly they get stabbed through the back, it's just almost felt like, oh, that happened, and everyone knew that was going to happen when they first came to blows at the start of this fight. And I'd rather seen something slightly different. It doesn't even need to be different. That the end result doesn't have to be different, but shot differently or done in a different way that just made it seem slightly kind of more inventive. Up to then, I quite liked the gore that we had, and I'm not really a gore person, but that kind of made that fight slightly more interesting. I know. So it was interesting, and then it wasn't when it ended, and that's all I'll say before I kind of get into the spoiler part. So and there's another part to it for me, and it's a fear thing, right? Which is, we'll get into this more in the spoilers, but there's lots of people talking about how this episode has lifted the lid on this and that theory, right? And how all these theories are now, I'm not sure about that, but without getting into spoilers, if things do go the way a lot of fans think they're going to go now, I'm going to be quite disappointed in some of the writing that's happened so far. And I'll explain that more when we get into spoilers. So maybe we should just do that spoiler. And get
absolutely.
Into spoilers. Do you have anywhere you wanted to kind of start off?
I'm interested in. I'm interested in what theories might upset you. So what happened here that's got you potentially concerned?
Sauron. Who is Sauron? This is the big discussion that's been going on, and there's a lot of the fan base have now decided that as of the episode that we've just watched, that it proves that Halbrand is Sauron in disguise. Now, I'm not going to say he's not. Up until this point, I would have said he's not, and I'm going to give you all my reasons why it wouldn't work, right? But this is where the worry comes in, because although I'm going to give all the reasons why it shouldn't work, I'm now worried that they're going to do it anyway. If that makes sense. Because they leave a lot of things in this episode which they are definitely trying to suggest that this could be Sauron. I just don't see... I think they're making it, if it is Sauron, they've made it too obvious, actually, and then I'll get into all my other concerns with it as I go along. But I'm kind of hopeful that they're just a little bit better than that, and that they're really just putting these clues in there for the people that don't want to think too closely about it, and then they're going to reveal that that's not the case at all, and it's going to be something far more realistic. That's my hope, but the worry is that they're not smart enough to pull that off, and it's going to go exactly as I expect.
Is Sony involved in any way?
No, I don't think they are in this. No, anyway. You know what I mean, right? So
yes,
we're in full spoiler territory here. So I can understand that there are, if we look at the story that Adar tells about Sauron, he says that Sauron was in the north, and he was sort of genuinely trying to think of ways to help the people, but he was doing it in a way where he was sacrificing hundreds of orcs to test out basically a bit of scientific experimentation, and he was getting a bit pissed off that he couldn't get his experiments to work. Okay, now everything that Adar says fits in with the lore at this point, because it's kind of what Celebrimbor said about the rings, that it takes sacrifice, right? So Sauron's probably trying to create magical artifacts without having to put some of himself, his own power into it, and probably at some point comes to the realization that actually that's the key, that he needs to put some of his kind of own power into it, because we know that's how the One Ring works and functions, and why there's a symbiotic relationship between the two, etc. So I kind of like the story that they're telling there, but then there's things like Halbrand saying to Adar, do you remember me? And Adar going, no, I've got no idea who you are, because I doubt Sauron could look theoretically at anyone he wants, so why would he look at Halbrand, and why would Adar put that connection together? So they think that's that reason. The fact that he's basically just been made king of the Southlands, with walking about with a pouch and saying he didn't want to be king, somehow he's managed to end up being king, and that would fit in almost with Sauron's kind of delusions of grandeur, that these people have made me king, just naturally. That would potentially feed into his delusions of grandeur, in terms of where it would make him think, well, if it's that easy, maybe I should be in charge, and all that sort of stuff. So the idea is a lot of fan base think that what we've seen so far from Halbrand is a repentant Sauron, that after Adar's killed him, he's been wandering about, deciding what he wants to do with his life and shit, and just happened to be in this boat that happened to run into Galadriel, that happened to go to Numenor, and that a lot of the things that we see him doing manipulative-wise are hints that he could be Sauron. All right. Do you see any of that so far before I get into all my issues with it?
Well, I don't know if I buy it, or if I'm as concerned as you. I go back to the previous episode, or where they actually left, and I had mentioned it feels like there was more to all of that, and that they cut some stuff out. One of those was how quickly he goes from leaving the pouch on the table to grabbing it and deciding to go to the meeting and accept his role. I don't think you show that type of hesitance in a scene, and then say, oh well, it was Sauron all along. That would be awful misdirection writing in my mind, and I would be angry about that.
I feel Halbrand's actually a good character at the moment.
Yeah.
And if he actually was Sauron, he doesn't feel like as good a character, because I think this would almost feel like the shtick that they've got this sold on. We're going to have this character that's repentant at first, and then we're going to reveal it through Sauron, and then show his bad side. It doesn't work for me.
I think the quickness in the decision to go, be the king in the Southlands, is not. I think that's, like I said, the bad editing. That one scene where he's talking to Galadriel and is leaves the pouch and then comes back and grabs it and decides to move forward. That right there is my linchpin, if you will, on why he isn't Sauron, unless they do something ridiculous where Sauron's just in his ear. Like, he's not really Sauron, but Sauron's in his ear and is puppeting him. I could see
more someone who has this kind of thrust upon them, but being king of the Southlands, it's just turned into basically Mordor without having the name yet. It ain't going to be a nice place to live.
No. I liked that. That was pretty cool.
I mean, one theory from some fans is that he's the guy that becomes the king of the dead, that ends up being cursed by Isildur, and they spend their time under that mountain, and then Aragorn releases them at the end of Lord of the Rings in the final battle. That almost like he might fight so often that he ends up, a good arc for him would be that he actually says no to any more fighting these people. He almost feels like he's had enough and unwittingly kind of curses them as a part of that. That would be kind of cool, but really, you know, that's getting far too far on, and there's not enough to suggest that whatsoever.
Like I said, I don't. If they do it, then you guys wrote it very badly, because why would you put that one scene? That one scene, like I said, shows a very human reluctance. Let me ask you this: how would you feel if he's not Sauron, but Sauron's in his ear? Sauron's, I don't know how he's in his ear. You said he can be anything, anywhere, any time. I don't know. Maybe he's a bug.
No, he can't be. He's not omnipotent, right? They can't do that. Right. So and this is one of the points I'm going to go on to about why him being Halbrand doesn't make any sense from a lore point of view. All right, even though people have been arguing all weekend that it does, it doesn't. So, you know, Amaya doesn't have to have a corporeal form. Their natural state is non-corporeal, right? Which means they are like mist, invisible beings that fly around, you know? So people have, like, my main argument about Halbrand is, if Halbrand is Sauron, why was he in a boat in the middle of the ocean that had been wrecked and standing there with all those other mortals that he clearly didn't care much about anyway, and just kind of hoping for rescue? He is a Maya. That means he has the ability to go, I'm dipping, assholes, bye, ping, and just turn into invisibleness. And then somebody said maybe he was just contemplating his next steps after being killed by
That's
Ada.
not what he does, like that.
Why would you, if you're a Maya, why would you take on a human body and sit in a boat in the middle? Why would you do that, right? You could sit in the middle of the ocean in a non-corporeal state, or you could sit in the middle of the air and think. You don't have to be a body somewhere to think. And actually that's less safe, because then you've got a chance of something happening to you. Now, could Sauron have been killed by Ada? Yes, when they take on a mortal body, it can be hurt, right? Sauron was defeated at several points that way where he lost his body, but it's not a death, because it just takes them a little bit of time to kind of almost regather himself, make a new body again, and push on. You know, that's all it is. It's not a severe hindrance to them at that time. But if they're not in a body form, Ada couldn't have done anything to Sauron. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That's the point. You know, once he's in that non-corporeal form, you cannot hurt him at that point, because he's an angelic type being. Sorry.
You got to call the Ghostbusters to deal with that.
You would, absolutely. You know, you would need some sort of plasma and slipstreams and shit. And ghost traps.
Love it.
Call on Sony.
No.
No, please don't ever.
Give the rights back to it's them.
I can't get over this. And what I find is whenever I've been debating this point with people online, people are making excuses because they now think it has to be Halbrand, and it's almost like, we know this is where the writers are going to go, so we're going to make excuses for why it works before it happens.
I don't think it works very well. I really don't.
Because the arguments I'm hearing is, well, why wouldn't he do that? You know, and it's like, or people will say, well, they can't just go up and fly away. I mean, Gandalf never did that. Hold on, let's just get one thing.
Gandalf was in a corporeal form, though.
Gandalf was in a enforced corporeal form. That's the whole point of an Astari, so that they couldn't match power for power against Sauron, because that shit's far too dangerous and leveled an entire continent the last time they tried that. So they're sent with severe limitations, like we see, funnily enough, in The Stranger. That's an Astari body, because not understanding the full breadth of your powers, that is not what we're seeing in Halbrand. Halbrand's obviously shown no magical ability or anything like that yet either. There's no necessarily any need that, but let's just explore, Sauron's character. This is someone who doesn't particularly like to fight. That's not Sauron's character. He will, when pushed, or when he thinks he has a good enough advantage, he may, but he's not that type. He's more of a sit-back general type of thing, a deceiver that plays behind the scenes.
Do you know if Tolkien considered Sun Tzu's Art of War with how he developed Sauron and his kind of mentality? Do you know at all? Because there's a lot of things that you talk about he only fights when he knows he can win, certain tactical superiorities and things like that, and a lot of that is in the art of war. So
I mean, Tolkien would be more like faith in the brave and I doubt he would be, because for Tolkien it was more about the good side winning, because the light's with them and they're brave and they're valiant, and that kind of stuff, which doesn't really kind of correspond to true warfare, which is where Sun Tzu comes in. So I wouldn't have thought so. But the idea of Sauron is this is not a brave person. Sauron is that's one thing that we can't say was brave. In terms of was Sauron ever repentant, it's difficult to say. Tolkien's words in this were basically that after Morgoth's defeat, Eowyn, who was basically the chief Maya, right? So the most powerful of their class, Sauron and all that sort of stuff. And he was literally leading the army to fight against Morgoth and bring him back in chains. And they won, and they dragged his master out in chains and went and imprisoned him somewhere, right? And Sauron did kind of bow before Eowyn and say, look, I'm really repentant, I wish I'd never done that, forgive me, etc., etc. And what Tolkien said is, there's many believe that at first he truly meant it. And that's what they're using now, the fan base, to say, well, this is the period where he first truly meant it. But this is, admittedly by the show, supposed to be like 1,000 odd years after the end of Morgoth. So Sauron's been in this phase for thousands of years. Was he truly repentant when he was up in the north, sacrificing orcs to try this new kind of power thing? So, I mean, what is true is that at this point, Sauron's not kind of like the evil lord he was in the Third Age, right? He is more about that he genuinely believes that he is the best person to lead these people. And he probably at some point thinks the rings are a good idea, because they will all have the power to do everything that they need to do to keep their... And who better than me, a Maya, who's far more powerful and knowledgeable than all these people to wear the one ring, just so I can keep it all ticking over and make everybody happy. That's his goal at this point, And I'm not seeing that in Halbrand's character. There's also another factor to this, right, which is, I'm sorry this is going on, but this is kind of the main beef I've been having.
All right. And
I think it's the most important discussion you have at the moment.
We'll get to my blocking and editing stuff after.
Is that if Sauron is Halbrand, then that's where he's been for the whole of this show so far, because Sauron hasn't been jumping back and forth, quickly flying to London, being somebody else, then flying back and being Halbrand. There's not been enough time, and it would be stupid now to go back and show shots where Halbrand's disappearing in his prison cell.
I'm telling you, man, it's a bird or a bee, and he's flying between people and whispering in their ears.
Well, the best thing that they could do for me is we're not hearing the behind the scenes, and this is what I said last week of what's going on about the elf story. So to me, the best place for Anatar to be, which is the name he goes by at this time,
in the elf city,
is in London, and he's the one influencing the elves to try and create the rings. He's the one that's in Celebrimbor's ear, talking up the Mithril lore and all that, telling them these lies, because he's already come to the idea. And it's maybe working with Celebrimbor where he's realised his mistake, where you need to put something of yourself into it. And this is him. He's been working on this ringcraft, because Adar talks about, all these experiments he's doing. Well, Tolkien talked about, that there were essays in ring making that Sauron worked on beforehand, things that he did to try out the craft before he ever made the great rings with Celebrimbor. So, to me, if Halbrand's been Sauron all along, then he can't be in London influencing all that. So what the hell's going on there? And none of that makes any sense for me either. So there's my ins and outs of why I still don't think Halbrand is Sauron. But I do admit that it's possible they could pull it off. And if they do pull it off, I will hate it for the reasons that I've just stated above. Your turn.
I agree. Like I said, I don't think anyone is necessarily Sauron at this point, but I like anyone that we've seen that's standing out, none of the main characters. But I do think that it's very possible we're going to find out he's been in Halbrand's ear some way. Like I said, I'm lynching it all on that one scene and the fact that they showed us that scene. But I also, my biggest concern is if they play with the lore, like you said, and even within their show where they say, you know, hey, he's relatively recently been doing these horrible experiments, and then they go back and try to make him sympathetic. Like, no, it's fine, guys. Let you know, he is a bad guy. Like Cam said, he had his period of try to do right, but that obviously should be gone. Never willing to go and face judgment from his peers in Valinor. Exactly. Never went back home, and that would have been true repentance. So he never went that far. So let's hope that they let him be a bad guy, please. The thing is, there's something going on with Halbrand that we're not seeing yet. I think that's fundamentally true. Would you agree? You know, the fact that he's just been made a king, basically by Galadriel finding a pouch on him, saying that he should be a king, and then Miriel going by what Galadriel's told her to say this guy is basically the king, and then he turns up and all these people go, oh, you must be the king that we were promised. You know, none of them have ever met him before. That's a strange way to suddenly become a king. So I do think there's something else going on there. I have one possible theory, and that's that Sauron has already been making some rings of power at this point, but maybe they hadn't got quite so far as Celebrimbor needs it to be for some reason. I don't know. And that Halbrand, what he's got in his pouch is one of the actual rings of power that's given to men. That he was given one of those rings of power by Sauron. I believe that 100%. That's an influence on him, even though he's not necessarily always wearing it. And at some point, he's going to put that on, and he's going to fall under the sort of thraldom of Sauron. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I've been wondering what it was in the pouch. You know, I figured it's some sort of piece of jewelry, crystal, something. But that makes a lot of sense because, I mean, the Rings of Power is the title of the show, and at some point we need to touch on them a bit more. I don't even think they've mentioned that Celebrimbor is going to be making rings with this forge. He just talks about how grand and great it will be. So I could see that being the big reveal next week. Heard, this is a ring. Showrunners have said that the forging of the rings, they say, is a season 2 kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. But this could be a proto rings. Are we going to see like all 19 rings, like all the 19 great rings being created? What if Celebrimbor? What if they've experimented with the 9, first of all, the 9 for men, but they know that won't work for everybody, so now they're looking at different options for the dwarves and the elves, ultimately. Or even, like you said, a proto ring. Like this is Sauron's first attempt or something with his experiments before he moves on with Celebrimbor. I like all of that. That's all fine. Like he could be influenced by Sauron in any number of ways that could range from poorly written to well written, but that would be better than him being Sauron himself. I agree. Yeah. So you want to talk about the big fight for a bit? Yeah, sure. So I loved the gore and violence, like you said. I appreciated them not just killing women, and this sounds so awful, but again, it's like
I know
Cam
it
said,
sounds awful,
it's an equality thing. I really enjoyed watching them like slit their throats and be as brutal as they are with men.
Basically, yeah. Because normally
Uh,
shows would shy away from that, and it
yes,
would be the guy they killed, not the women, or
and
something like that. Yeah.
yep, and I mean, look, this is a fantasy world, but it is, like you said, nice to see them take battle realistically. And in this situation, it's not like the orcs are just gonna gently send the ladies off into the good night. No, they're gonna as brutally kill them as they kill the men, if not more so, because humans value female lives over male lives.
Specifically, these orcs are killing them to get Arendair to give up the location of the sword hilt.
So I did appreciate it. Fits. It's not just a shock value type thing, but it fits the lore, and it flies in the face of like you said, what normal TV and movies do. And I'm all about flying in the faces of the majority. No, anyways, punk rock. So I liked that. I love the amount of blood. I like that we almost got something through an eye. I almost wish the elf would have lost an eye, like legit, because there's a few things in horror that are just completely unnerving to nearly every human, and one of those is something going into the eye. Like that makes people cringe. Another one is whenever something gets in the soft spot of the throat, you'll see a lot of people get like stabbed slowly through there, and it's the idea of drowning on your blood at the same time as you're bleeding at, like it's awful. And there's a few other, but the eye is a big one, and I really enjoyed seeing that. My issues with like the editing and pacing, like I said, you get confused onto where these people are, how far and how fast they can travel, and why one group doesn't travel at all when another group can. I get it that the tower is on two different sides. There's a back side and then the front side, I guess. And it seems like the orcs are coming from some village on the front side up to the tower, or did the orcs come from the same village that they're defending now? And the humans somehow because they bring the tower down on some orcs, and it looks like the humans are already at, like, how did they? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's some blocking issues here.
There was two different villages, almost like there's a
triangle.
What I feel.
Right,
but
right.
It's nice to maybe show us that, or even just represent it in some way.
And what I think it is one of them is the village that they all came from, and that's where they defend. And then the other village is like when they were the one that the elf and her found when they were out looking for something several episodes ago, and then they discovered all the villagers were slaughtered, and that's where the orcs are coming from. But we don't get any sense of time and why didn't the orcs, they had already went to that original village that the humans defended to ransack it when the villagers had ran off, and that's where the boy found the sword and first used it and stole the key and used it and stuff. But like I said, man, they cut so much so quickly. You don't, and then the setup time, like they had all of that time to set up their defenses and stuff that made no sense. Great planning, great guerrilla warfare, the ideas of using the carts and hidden archers and all of that, great stuff again. But you're like, man, this is going to take you guys a while. You're smithing arrow tips, you're smithing swords, and no, this I can suspend a lot of belief, but you're showing me there's a time crunch. We got to be prepared, but you've given me no
trying to crunch so much time.
Yes,
maybe they crunched a bit too much here.
And yes, and you give me no reference point for time and distance.
That we should have had scouts from the Numenorians first. So the scouts should have found where they were fighting first.
I mean,
I would. They'd turn around and go back.
The Southlands are a pretty big area, so
back, because you would have
I can
sent
see that.
scouts out first of all, you know, and that might have given us the hint that, oh, there's a potential cavalry coming soon. Do you know what I mean?
Something like that. I mean, I'm even fine with them mostly just showing up at the end, but that would have made good sense as well. But it was just this lack of reference for time and distance, and this real choppiness. Like I said, it feels like a lot of stuff got cut out to make it shorter, make it faster. Maybe they had test audience saying it was long and or too slow or boring, but I will remind people that the beloved Lord of the Rings movies are very long with very few big action set pieces relative to the length of the movies and the fact that there's 3 of them. And there, I mean, even it's the number one complaint about the books. It's all world building. It's very, very slow. It's you know, everyone makes fun of the Lord of the Rings for being about walking, and you're gonna say that the TV show is too slow. Oh my God.
This is always the problem when you spend so much money in something. You can't just appeal to the token there to the people that like that kind of stuff. You've got to try and mass appeal to everyone, which means sometimes you have to speed things up. And you know, I kind of accepted that in the Lord of the Rings movies. Like, you know, they're not absolute adaptations whatsoever. We've talked about that before, but I still like them. You know, but I prefer the extended versions. But I can kind of understand why they had extended versions and why they had shorter ones. Just for the folk that have no interest in the extended editions, they'll go watch the movie once at the theatres and they will never watch it again. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You have to sometimes appeal to make enough money to actually spend enough money to make these things worthwhile. So there has to be. So for all the people like saying, "Oh, this should be absolutely like," you know, this should just be as strict to the books as it possibly can be. Here's the problem. It will either look crap because they will have to make it cheap because not enough people will watch it, or they have to make it more appealing to a mass audience. I'm sorry to explain this is how the world works to you, but you can't just have somebody make the perfect thing the way you want it in your head
just for you
for billions and billions of pounds. It has to appeal to everyone or as many people on planet Earth as they possibly can. And they have scientists, actual scientists, who work with data and demographics and all that sort of stuff, and they give them genuine factual data about what you all think and what you'll watch and what you find slow and what you don't. And that's how you can only ever give your opinion on a show, you know, rather than say it is A, B, or C, because we're all coming from a different viewpoint.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. With the fight itself, there were in the village, you feel that the set feels a lot smaller in this fight. Maybe it's the darkness and the light only lights up certain elements, which I get supposed to make you feel, you know, trapped in a way, but the blocking in it just felt very, very underwhelming. That's where I was like comparing it to the Book of Boba Fett. Even though they had a lot more people in one area fighting, it still didn't feel quite enough, and you felt like the village was really just this itty bitty area versus, you know, actually having some buildings spread out. There's some hilly and, you know, things different.
70 guys versus 30 rather than 500 versus 100 or 200, which I think is what they were going for. Yeah,
and I like I said, it's hard to excuse it when the budget's as high as it was, and I know they had filming during pandemic era situations, but you look at Game of Thrones, which had a lot of money thrown at it, and they had several battles that felt bigger. Like even the battle at the like in the interior of the was it the Black Castle, whatever castle's at the ice wall,
shot where you followed different viewpoints at the same time, and then
just
there'd be a change that
grander.
You know,
Yeah, it
felt
felt
like
grander.
it was
even
planned out better.
yeah,
You're
even the
absolutely
stuff
right.
just in the castle walls itself. Not even with the Northerners coming out of the wood line, and that of course looked real big and massive. But like in the thick of battle, it felt grander, bigger, and this is supposed to be that. But the coolest thing was the twist, like I said, I saw coming a mile away, which was, and I even told Christine, I was like, he's going to send the humans first. And it was even better sending them in their armor to make them, and putting enough orcs in there to really get the defending humans to think that they were only killing orcs. I, however, would, unlike being shocked, oh my god, we fought ourselves, we killed our brothers and sisters, I would have been like, that mother, he made us kill our brothers, and not only that, but they came and fought us. They fought us willingly. You know what?
I don't
Screw you
have
guys.
much
I'm not gonna
sympathy
feel
for those
bad. I'm not
guys,
gonna
no.
feel bad.
They
I'm
came
gonna
with the
be, you
intention
came
of killing
after
all
me?
of them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of them was going to stab you and kill you, you know. So
exactly. So 'em. I do like the twist, even though it was an obvious one. I really did appreciate the putting them in the orc armor. And so yeah, man, that those are my kind of thoughts on why that in particular was disappointing.
Yeah. The only thing I would maybe add to that was, kind of felt like Elendil should have been we should have saw him be a bit more competent, because this is someone who was supposed to be one of the greatest ever warriors of mankind. You know what I mean? As I said before in the show, I know they've not made him 8 foot tall and stuff like that, but you know, this is a guy that, if they follow this show to its lore conclusion, which we don't know that they will, has to 2v1 along with Gil-galad Sauron. Do you know what I mean? Himself. And, you know, in a battle that ultimately vanquishes all three of them at the same time, you know, and then, you know, unlike the movies, Isildur doesn't cut the ring off Sauron while he's grabbing to finish him off. He's been felled by Gil-galad and Elendil at that time, and kind of Isildur comes up and cuts the sword off cuts the finger off an already defeated Sauron. But it's at that point he disappears.
Yeah.
You know, because he wasn't really beaten, obviously, at that point. So, you know, that was my only maybe thing to add to that, is maybe they'll build that up and he'll become this great commander and become this great warrior as he goes forward, because he's inexperienced at the moment. In which case, okay, you know, my only thing is he needs to be at that point at the end, you know. But I kind of felt he wasn't that competent almost. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He kind of has to get rescued almost by his guys.
And I did like the volcano thing, you know, jump starting Mount Doom by putting a bunch of water into the volcano and causing a steam eruption. Neat, nifty, cool. Yeah. My issue is we know that the tunnels existed, and that the humans tried to board them up and stop them, but when they sent the humans in, the orcs could have come up through the tunnels as well, breaking through them and surprising them from within, and that would have made more sense on how quickly things got there versus the walk, because like I said, there's no reference anything. But I feel like the tunnels were, I get why they didn't want to use them too much, because they wanted to hide the idea of, oh, they're using this to start Mount Doom.
But they've already used them a lot previously. We've already seen what they've been doing, and we don't know why yet. So,
it's one of those just nitpicky things. But
I like the idea that the sword is possibly like almost like a predecessor of the One Ring in itself in some way. The Arondir says it can't be destroyed, you know, although he only hits it with a hammer a few times, so he doesn't make that decision fairly quickly. It can't be destroyed by this very simple hammer. It must be impossible to destroy. But the kind of the way Theo was talking about it, how he felt powerful with it, and he kind of didn't like not having it anymore. That kind of makes you think, maybe, is this something that Sauron's put a little bit of himself into at some point, and is it that power release which is causing what you see then to happen, rather than it be just a key that unlocks a door, kind of thing.
Maybe.
There's some magic going on there as well, some power of Sauron's.
I mean, it's what's interesting is the fact that key specifically brings down the wall. Like, that's the weird thing to me. Like, how specific of a thing, and does that mean Sauron was the one, or Morgoth was the one that dammed up that area?
That's
like,
quite possible that Sauron.
And then why did they dam it up?
Probably because they had forces there. They had men on their side as well, and you've got to feed them. So they had to have, even Mordor had farmland tributaries to the sort of southeast that they would feed people with, and he had his sort of man armies as well, if you like, down in the south. We see the Harondir or whatever that come up, and obviously the Return of the King to kind of aid Sauron. So they're peoples that have always been in really the service of kind of Sauron, because that's all they knew. And before him, Morgoth. So Sauron being a smith type, built towers and built structures, So I'm absolutely, kind of from an engineering point of view, that you would imagine if Morgoth wanted a dam built, then he would say, Sauron, build this dam, kind of thing.
And put in something to undo it in case he ever needed to. Okay, that makes sense.
It's possible. It is possible.
Yeah,
there's nothing in the law to say that happened. Obviously, this is absolutely show creation at this point. But yeah, it's possible.
Now, you still think Adar is that?
No,
you don't think he is at all?
No, if they're kind of saying that he's one of the early elves that got taken, and used to create the race of orcs initially, and obviously elves are immortal, so it's possible it could be that old. What that does is kind of canonizes for this show that they're going by the same thing as what the Lord of the Rings films did, that the orcs were created by Morgoth capturing the elves, torturing them, and making them breed into kind of orcs and stuff like that, right? But Tolkien never fully decided whether he wanted to do that, because there's a whole load of issues that causes with his whole mythology and what happens to elves after they die, because then orcs are really immortal elves, so all their souls would go to like the halls of Mandos and stuff like that, and that starts getting a bit complicated when he really wants them to be these almost soulless bestial creatures, as that you can kill off. So I can see why that didn't work for him, possibly later on before he finished it, but it's what they've decided to do with the show. It's what they've decided to do with the movies as well. It's fine, it's just one of those things.
Okay. Cool, man. Well, I think that's, the Numenorians showing up was again underwhelming because of the blocking and editing. I don't think there's too much more to say. Nah. Hopefully the finale is better.
I've got one. Well, we've got 2 to go because there's 8 episodes, so there's 2 more.
Oh, there's still 2. See, I made that same mistake with She-Hulk. Unfortunately, I thought it only had 1 left. Okay, well, we got 2 episodes. That makes me happier that there's time to correct the ship.
Yeah.
Because we've had
two
rough episodes.
I won't go into it in too much detail. There's a lot of arguing, but I think it's Galadriel hate again, where fans are saying that she should have sensed the switcheroo with the knife, But what we've got to remember, I'll just say this one point quickly. She was sent by Arondir, who said, whatever he's got, you need to get it back. They never told her anything about it. She had never held it before, so wouldn't have known that it was supposed to be a dark item. What I could understand is why Arondir should have worked that out a little bit quicker. But let's face it, Waldreg was already long on the way to where he was going by that point, and it would have made much difference anyway. So,
definitely. Ready to wrap it up, man? Almost an hour chit-chatting about a 70-some-odd minute long show. Not too bad. walk us through the end, guys. Check out lrmonline.com every day for all entertainment, all entertainment news, needs, and opinions. We've got written reviews, articles on leaks and rumors, official news, all sorts of things, celebrity interviews that also go up on the LRM Online YouTube channel, so check that out. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, give us a follow. You can find more great shows on anything and everything in entertainment, from Breaking Geek and the Daily Cup of Genre Marvel, and the Cantina cover, Marvel Multiverse Mayhem and the Cantina cover Marvel news and reviews and Star Wars news and reviews, respectively. And Anime-Versal Reviews is back already. No time off with our reviews on Spy Family, and starting on the 11th, we will also be doing Chainsaw Man, and I think I got all of them now. So all of those go up in video format on the YouTube channel, as well as AVR Squared anime reactions, Genre Shot trailer reactions, and I'm trying to do game streaming. So yeah, check it out. Subscribe, leave us some thumbs up, down, comments. Let us know what we're doing well, what we can do better, and what we're doing poorly, and how we can, stop. Jam, anything else?
Yeah, just what Kel said. Anything you want to let us know? If you're watching on YouTube, our details for contact us on Twitter are on the screen at the moment. If you're on podcast, you'll find it in the details. And just drop us a line and let us know what you think, if you feel like it. And other than that, see you next week for episode 7 of The Rings of Power, and we'll be back to let you know what we thought.
Bye.